Hey everyone. Today I want to get you started thinking about some of the various features of the AP essays that you will be asked to write in history, specifically the feature called context. While it is not strictly required, we are going to ask that your context be part of your introductory paragraph. In fact, the very first part of it, and then it will lead into your thesis statement. Now, according to the AP history rubrics for both the DBQ and the LEQ, context is any information that, quote, describes the broader historical context relevant to the prompt. To clarify that a bit more, in order to earn the context point, you must relate the topic of the prompt to broader historical events, developments, or processes that occur before, during, or continue after the time frame of the question. This point is not awarded for merely a phrase or reference. So let's break that down to what this all means for you in a practical sense. What this first part means, more or less, is that you need to give some backstory. Has a friend ever shoved their phone in your face and said, "Look what Billy just texted me," only for it to be some really simple message that seems pretty innocuous? That's probably because you're lacking the context of the rest of the conversation. You probably want to scroll back a bit to the beginning of the thread to really understand why Billy's text has your friend so upset, since different contexts can give the individual event different meanings. Similarly, with your writing, there will be certain historical events or processes that you will be expected to explain or clarify in order to show that you understand how the specific topic of the essay fits into the wider historical conversation. For example, if you were being asked to compare Japanese and European feudalism, it would probably be beneficial to first explain what feudalism actually is, conceptually, and then explain what historical events or circumstances caused each of those feudal systems to develop in the first place. Those are things that would be relevant to understanding what you're dealing with before you go on to then explain how the systems might be similar or different. Look, there are perfectly acceptable ways to integrate your contextualization to address the processes and events before, during, or after the time frame of the prompt. You might even be able to manage two of those at once. But your plan A should usually be to get the events before the frame of the essay. For the sake of world history and our timeline being as monstrous as it is, you are going to want to look at least 100 years before the topic of the prompt, if not more. To give another example, let's say you've been given a prompt asking you to discuss how the creation of new empires impacted trade networks in Afro-Eurasia between 1200 and 1450. Minimum, you should give a couple of examples of empires that emerged in that time period, like the Mongol Empire or Mali. Ideally, you should explain what trade routes we're even talking about, and then give a baseline for what they were like before the emergence of those empires. Saying you could walk from one end of the Silk Road to the other with a gold plate on your head without fear of being robbed during the height of the Mongol Empire doesn't mean as much if you could do that before anyway. So the historical context from before the time frame of the essay matters. Oh my God, you have to be specific. Y'all, you have to be specific. This is why we make you do vocabulary with your notes. You have to use proper nouns, events, people, places, and regions. Dates would be just mwah. You cannot roll up on this essay and start writing a context paragraph that sounds something like this.
The years 1200 to 1450 saw a lot of change occur. There were many trade routes in certain parts of the world that exchanged a variety of items.
None of that means anything. What change? What trade routes? What parts of the world? What items? This context actually produces more questions than it answers, and therefore is garbage context. And so help me, if you use the phrase certain people or certain places in order to avoid using an actual specific detail, I will make sure that every door handle that you touch in this building from now until May is sticky. See if I don't. So if you were giving a prompt asking you to discuss the causes of the Great Dying, You can't just say,
the Europeans were having difficulty getting to the trade routes in Asia, so they tried to sail around them and accidentally found the Americas.
you really need to say something more like,
the Spanish and Portuguese were blocked from Silk Road and Indian Ocean luxury trade by growing Muslim empires like the Ottoman, who had conquered what was left of Byzantium. So rulers like Henry the Navigator and Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain paid explorers to find naval routes around Muslim territories. One of those explorers, Christopher Columbus, discovered a path to the Americas instead, which the Europeans began to migrate to in large numbers.
So I want you to notice a couple of things here. One, since the prompt asked for the causes of the Great Dying, I couldn't really talk about the Columbian Exchange in the context, because the Columbian Exchange is at least one cause of the Great Dying. So that would just be part of the essay. So then in my context, I have to go further back and give the context of the causes. Two, the context that I've written is about 4 sentences long and leads right up to the doorstep of our hypothetical thesis statement. A good context should do that. Start with global events and then narrow them down until you can just fall right into your thesis statement. So let's put all of this to use with a prompt that we are familiar with and one that we already have a thesis statement for. So the thesis statement we wrote together for this should sound something like this.
Muslim and Christian responses to the Black Death were similar in that they both thought the plague was sent from God. However, they disagreed about why God sent the plague, and the Christian communities experienced conflict related to the plague, while the Muslim communities banded together. Therefore, the Muslim and Christian responses were mostly different.
So my suggestion for this process would be to focus in on that thesis topic and then kind of zoom out one stage at a time from there. So if the topic itself is the response to the Black Death, we'll zoom out once. Well, what is the Black Death? Zoom out to stage 2. How did the Black Death get to those communities? And then zoom out to stage 3. Well, what do we know about these religious communities during the Middle Ages? That gives us a general idea of what kind of contextual information would be good for this topic. Starting at the most zoomed out, you just need to answer those questions with at least one complete sentence to get a decent, basic context intro. So let's try it. During the Middle Ages, a majority of the world's Christian population was centered in Europe, divided between the Roman Catholic West and the Orthodox East. In the same time period, the religion of Islam spread from its birthplace in Mecca on the Arabian Peninsula to the Middle East, South Asia, and Africa. These communities grew through networks of exchange like the Silk Road, which also encouraged the exchange of technology, languages, and disease like the Black Death. The Black Death started in Central Asia and spread through trade and exchange all through the Dar al-Islam and Western Christendom. The Black Death was a global pandemic that ended up killing millions, including at least 1/3 of the population of Europe. Muslim and Christian responses to the Black Death were similar in that they both thought the plague was sent from God. However, they disagreed about why God sent the plague, and the Christian communities experienced conflict related to the plague, while Muslim communities banded together. Therefore, the Muslim and Christian responses were mostly different. All right, we were related to larger events that happened before the events of the essay. We were specific and left it right on the doorstep of the thesis. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the process of writing the context portion of your essay. The same rules apply for a DBQ and an LEQ, so no matter which type of essay you're writing, you should at least know how to get started. Good luck.